Today I will tell you about a Christmas when I realized the people I loved most had quietly redrawn the meaning of family. What was supposed to be a season of warmth became a season of silence. I found myself left outside the very celebration I had helped build for decades. At first, I thought it was carelessness, an oversight that would be corrected, but it was not. That winter, I discovered that being excluded was not the worst pain. It was realizing I had let it happen by never speaking up. And yet, as cruel as that December felt it set in motion, the moment that finally gave me back my voice. The day I was finally seen not as a burden, but as a woman with her own worth. What seemed like rejection at Christmas became the path to recognition I never expected. If you have ever been overlooked by your own family, if you have ever wondered whether silence is protecting peace or simply erasing you, then this story will feel painfully familiar. Please like and subscribe if you want to hear more grandma life stories, because this is where the quiet voices are finally heard. My name is Emily Patterson. I am 70 years old, living in a quiet suburb just outside of Portland, Oregon. The house I live in is a modest two-story with weathered gray siding, surrounded by Douglas firs that whisper in the winter wind. It used to feel full of life. My husband Richard's laughter once filled these walls, but since he passed 5 years ago, the rooms echo differently. His armchair still sits in the corner of my study, turned toward the garden. I cannot bring myself to move it. That chair has become the only witness to conversations I can no longer have. It was early December when I sat at my desk, a stack of credit card statements spread before me. The yellow desk lamp flickered, throwing shadows on my lined face. I picked up the first page and my eyes scanned the numbers, my hand trembling slightly as I traced the ink. I spread the papers across my desk, my eyes moving over each line. Aspen Resort, $6,000. Vera Wang wedding gown, $5,000. Imported Dutch flowers, $3,500. Photography and video, $2,000. Jewelry and accessories, $1,500. Little extras, $1,000. $19,000 in total. I set the statement down and let my hand rest on Richard's old armchair, still turned toward the garden. It had been his favorite spot. Now it was nothing more than a silent witness. The television murmured from the living room, the evening news, carrying a segment that caught my ear. Elder financial fraud is rising across America. Seniors are increasingly targeted by family members who exploit trust for personal gain. I let out a breath that felt more like a surrender. Richard, if you were still here, would you have stopped this before it reached 19,000? Life since his passing had turned into quiet routines, ones that looked ordinary from the outside. I woke at 6 each morning, brewed coffee, read the newspaper alone, and walked the small path to the mailbox. From there, my day belonged not to me, but to my children. Olivia, my eldest, always sent lists, ending with a heart emoji and a quick "love you, Mom." On the surface, it looked like affection. But in truth, it was instruction, a reminder that my role was to provide, to serve. Anthony, my youngest, drifted through the house with the ease of someone who believed it was his. He lived here with his girlfriend, though he never asked if it was all right. He took the car whenever he needed. It helped himself to the fridge and filled the rooms with noise and clutter that made me feel like a guest in my own home. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself family meant sacrifice. But sacrifice had become survival. Each month, my pension of $2,500 arrived. After Medicare and the small supplemental insurance Richard had left me, I had a little less than $2,000 to live on. From that, utilities, groceries, and upkeep of the house ate away another $1,000. What should have been manageable turned suffocating because Olivia had been added as a secondary cardholder on my account 2 years ago. It was supposed to be for emergencies. She had looked at me then, wide-eyed, promising, "Only if something happens, Mom, just for peace of mind." I wanted to trust her. I did trust her. Now that same card carried a dream wedding I had never agreed to pay for. Olivia's dream snow-capped mountains, designer gowns, a reception draped in imported flowers. 19,000 already gone with deposits lined up for even more. She did not ask if I could afford it because the answer would have been no. She simply took believing my silence was the same as permission. The truth was harder to face, that silence had become my habit. After Richard died, I let Olivia and Anthony lean on me, thinking it was love. I used my savings, even the life insurance that was meant to carry me through old age. What remains now is a thin cushion, barely enough to cover 1 or 2 months if something went wrong. The numbers ran endlessly through my mind, columns of red that reminded me that survival was only possible if I continued shrinking my own needs. I thought of the heating bill due next week, of the roof that needed repair, of how quickly a medical emergency could take everything away. And yet Olivia's wedding continued to grow like a fire, consuming every corner of my life. I picked up the credit card statement again, the ink smudging slightly under my fingers. My pulse quickened. I remembered the chair behind me, the empty space where Richard should have been, and realized the silence in the house was no longer peace. It was permission. Permission for my children to treat me as though I no longer had a say in my own life. My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia lit up the screen. "Mom, can you stop by the store today? Just grab the usual. I'm slammed with the event planners. You're the best. Love you." I stared at the words, that little red heart blinking back at me like a cruel joke. Love. It was always love you, Mom, when what she meant was, do it for me, Mom. The smile crept on my face, but it wasn't real. It was muscle memory, a reflex built from years of swallowing my own protests. The best. That was what she called me when I acted like her assistant. Not her mother. Not the woman who had raised her with both hands and no partner after Richard died. Just the unpaid errand runner who still happened to breathe. I set the phone down, pressing my thumb against the screen a little too long before letting it go. The back door swung open. Anthony's voice echoed before his face even appeared. "Mom." He didn't look at me. His eyes were glued to his phone fingers, scrolling. "I'm taking the car tonight. Hermione and I are meeting friends downtown." Hermione followed him in her hair, tied in a sleek bun yoga mat, slung casually over her shoulder. 26, glowing, carefree. She gave me a polite smile, the kind you give a stranger in line at the grocery store, then bent down and opened my fridge without asking. She pulled out a cup of Greek yogurt, peeled the lid back, and leaned against my counter, as though this kitchen belonged to her. I forced a smile. But inside, the words turned bitter. "As if you don't already think this house is yours." Anthony plopped onto the couch legs, stretched out, scrolling still. "Don't wait up. And yeah, I'll need gas money too. Gas money, my car, my insurance, my name on every bill. And yet it was his expectation, not his request. I studied him, my youngest child, the one I had once cradled in my arms, the one Richard used to call our baby boy. What I saw now wasn't a boy, but a man who believed responsibility was optional. He had moved back in 8 months ago, saying he needed time to find himself. What he found instead was free rent, free meals, and a girlfriend who had the luxury of living like a guest in someone else's home. Hermione licked the yogurt spoon, humming lightly as she checked her phone. Neither of them noticed me. Still standing there, still invisible, still expected to provide without question. The texts from Olivia glowed again. Organic chicken, fresh kale, gluten-free bread. Her list ran on longer than I could read in one breath. Each item tallied silently in my mind against the numbers from last night's statement. 19,000 already gone. And now groceries that cost twice as much because regular food just isn't healthy enough, Mom. I heard Anthony laugh at something on his phone, Hermione joining in. They were comfortable here, too, comfortable. And me, I was reduced to the background, the silent servant in the very house Richard and I built with every sacrifice we could manage. I wanted to speak, to tell them no, to tell Olivia to buy her own kale, to tell Anthony to get a job, to tell Hermione to stop treating me like a hotel concierge. But the words stuck in my throat. The fear of losing them, losing whatever little family I had left, was stronger than the anger boiling inside me. Anthony finally looked up just for a second. Oh, and Mom, can you do laundry tomorrow? Hermione's yoga gear needs to be clean for her class. Hermione laughed softly. Thanks, Emily. You're a lifesaver. A lifesaver. Another word dressed as affection, another disguise for expectation. I forced a nod, though my jaw tightened. I wanted to scream, but I only whispered to myself so low no one could hear. Is this all I am to you? The house felt smaller. Then shrinking around me filled with voices that weren't mine, demands that weren't fair, and debts that weren't my own. Every corner echoed with their lives, while mine was quietly erased. I looked again at the phone buzzing on the counter, Olivia's list of organics flashing. I remembered when she was little, when she used to tug at my sleeve and ask for apple slices, peanut butter, anything simple. Back then, a hug from me was enough. Now it was credit cards, cash, and errands disguised with red hearts and empty words. The mask of affection, that's what it had become. I had accepted for too long. Behind it lay nothing but entitlement and my silence feeding it. I stood taller, though my body trembled. I didn't say no, not yet. But the thought was there, sharper than it had ever been. One day the word would leave my lips, and when it did, they would not be ready. Anthony's laughter, Hermione's smile, Olivia's texts, it all blended into a chorus that painted me as their servant. But my heart whispered a different truth. Something was shifting, and for the first time in years, I felt it the possibility that love didn't have to mean losing myself. I carried the laundry basket out into the garden, the crisp air biting against my cheeks. The clothesline creaked softly as I clipped Richard's old flannel shirt beside my plain nightgown. My hands moved in rhythm, but my mind wandered. For a fleeting second, the smell of detergent carried me back to simpler days when Christmas meant flour on the counter stockings by the fireplace and Richard humming carols off-key while the kids giggled. Then I froze. Anthony's voice drifted through the cracked window of the room beside the garden, low, hurried, and sharp in a way I rarely heard from him. I leaned closer, almost against my will. "Don't worry, sis," Anthony said. His tone was casual, conspiratorial. "I'll handle Mom. I'll phrase it gently later. You just tell her Christmas dinner's gonna be different this year. We'll say it's at the mountain restaurant. Make it sound like something special, you know?" My heart thudded against my ribs. A pause then, his voice again. "Yeah, exactly. We'll tell her it's just because traveling is tough for her these days. Makes sense, right?" Another pause. Olivia's voice didn't reach me, but I could feel her agreement through his silence. Then Anthony chuckled softly, cruel in its carelessness. "Come on, Olivia. You know how it is. The Henrys are classy people. If Mom's there, it's just awkward. She doesn't fit. It ruins the atmosphere. Let's just break it to her after. By then it'll be too late anyway." The basket slipped slightly in my grip, a sock fluttering down into the dirt. My knees felt weak, but I didn't move. My breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat. Awkward, doesn't fit, ruins the atmosphere. That was me. Their mother, 40 years of Christmas dinners every year in this very house with candles. Richard lit and dishes. I spent hours cooking dishes they once licked, clean, laughing, and begging for seconds. 40 years of tradition built by our family, carried in my hands, held together by my heart. And now discarded, erased because I was inconvenient. Anthony's voice again, lower this time, almost smug. "Trust me, she'll swallow it. She always does." The words sliced through me more deeply than any blade could. I pressed my palm to the brick wall, grounding myself. The garden blurred before my eyes. I could hear my pulse pounding louder than the distant hum of traffic, louder than the birds rustling in the branches overhead. For a moment, I thought tears would fall, but they didn't, not this time. My body shook, but my eyes stayed dry. The grief was there, but it wasn't the soft, helpless grief I'd known for years. It was different now, solid, cold, sharp. I bent down, picked up the fallen sock, brushed off the dirt, and placed it back into the basket. My hands no longer trembled. Inside the house, Anthony's voice trailed off. A laugh, a click, silence. I walked slowly back, in each step deliberate. The weight inside me shifted from heartbreak to clarity. In my office, the warm yellow lamp glowed over Richard's photo on the desk. He looked so young there, standing beside me on our wedding day. I touched the frame with the back of my hand. Richard? I whispered, my voice steady. They've forgotten who built this home. They've forgotten who held this family together. And maybe that's my fault. My eyes dropped to the folded bank statement still lying on the desk. $19,000. Olivia's dream wedding. All of it taken from my savings, from Richard's insurance, from every penny we had worked for together. I had let it happen. I had said nothing. Silence had been my gift, my sacrifice. But silence, I realized now, was also permission. I smoothed the paper flat, folded it once more with careful precision, then set it aside. My hand lingered on the phone. A simple device, yet heavy with possibility. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I will make a few calls. I didn't know yet exactly what those calls would mean. Bankers, lawyers, maybe even Henry's family themselves. But the decision was there, hard and clear. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the photo of our wedding again. Richard's smile was broad, proud, unguarded. Mine was shy but certain. We had believed then that love could conquer all, that family would always hold together. Now, decades later, I understood family could fracture when respect disappeared. Love without respect was just manipulation wrapped in sentiment. I glanced at the phone one more time. Anthony's words replayed in my mind like a cruel echo. She'll swallow it. She always does. Not anymore. My lips pressed into a line, not trembling this time, but firm. The ache in my chest remained, but it was no longer weakness. It was a reminder. They thought I would accept exclusion, that I would sit quietly while they carved me out of my own family's tradition. They thought my silence meant surrender. But tomorrow, when the calls were made, they would learn. I turned off the lamp, the room sinking into shadow. The laundry still hung outside the basket, still half full, but I didn't care. For once, I didn't rush to finish every chore. For once, I let the night take the weight of what I'd overheard. In the dark, my whisper lingered in the room, meant only for Richard's memory. They won't silence me again. The alarm buzzed at 6:30, but I was already awake. I had been staring at the ceiling since before dawn, waiting for the light to shift, waiting for the clock to give me permission to act. The heaviness of last night hadn't left me. It had hardened into resolve. I brewed a pot of coffee, black and bitter. I didn't bother with toast, didn't bother with the careful routine breakfast I had built over the years. Today was not about routine. Today was about reclamation. At exactly 7:30, I dialed the number on the back of my credit card. My fingers didn't shake. "Thank you for calling." A woman's professional voice answered. "How can I assist you today?" I inhaled slowly. "I'd like to report unauthorized transactions on my account." There was a pause on the other end. "Can you verify which transactions you believe are unauthorized?" I reached for the statement on the desk, the one I had folded and unfolded so many times it was starting to crease at the edges. Aspen Ski Resort, Vera Wang Bridal, imports of Dutch tulips, all of them, $19,000 in total. The woman hesitated. "Mrs. Patterson, these appear to have been charged by an additional card holder on your account. An Olivia Patterson." "My daughter," I said, sharply cutting her off. "She was added for emergencies only. These charges were not emergencies. They were fraud, plain and simple. I want them flagged, immediately." Her tone shifted softer. "Careful now." "Understood, ma'am. We will open a dispute claim and freeze the secondary card. Do you want the replacement card sent only to you?" "Yes." "To me. No one else." She asked me to verify my address, my phone number, my social security digits. I answered with precision, without faltering. At the end, she said, "It will take several weeks to resolve, but your liability will be under review." That's fine, I replied. Weeks I can manage. Bleeding out my life's work, I cannot. When I ended the call, I sat for a moment in the stillness. The first domino had fallen. By 8 near, I had the bank on the line. A man with a clipped accent greeted me. How can I help you this morning, Mrs. Patterson? I want Anthony Patterson removed from all my joint or secondary accounts, I said without preamble. Effective immediately. There was a pause, the sound of keys tapping. Anthony Patterson is listed as an authorized user on your checking and savings. Are you sure you'd like him removed? Yes. My voice was sharp as steel. Completely, permanently. No more access. Another pause. Mrs. Patterson, once we remove him, he won't be able to deposit or withdraw funds. He won't be able to use your accounts in any capacity. You'll be solely responsible. I have always been solely responsible, I snapped. Remove him. The tapping resumed. All right, I'll finalize this now. You'll receive written confirmation within 5 business days. I closed my eyes, picturing Anthony's face when his next card swipe was declined, when the ATM rejected him. Would he storm in red with anger, demanding explanations? Probably. But for once, I wouldn't flinch. The man on the line added politely, Is there anything else I can assist you with? No, I said. You've done enough. When the line went dead, I realized my chest felt lighter, as though invisible hands had unclenched from around my ribs. At 8:30, I dialed the number I hadn't touched in years, the office of Charles Avery, the family's longtime attorney. His secretary answered with her brisk efficiency. This is Mr. Avery's office. This is Emily Patterson, I said. I need an appointment today. She hesitated. Mr. Avery's schedule is quite full. Could you manage later this week? No, I cut in. Today. This afternoon. Tell him it's regarding my estate and immediate changes to beneficiaries. He will understand. Her tone shifted, cautious. One moment, please. There was the rustle of papers, muffled voices, the sound of a receiver being picked up. Then Avery's familiar, gravelly baritone came on the line. Emily, good morning. I hear you need to see me. Yes, I said steady. This afternoon, if possible. A pause. Then, of course. 2 o'clock. I'll clear the slot. Thank you. When I set the phone down, my hands didn't tremble. Instead, I noticed something I hadn't felt in years, an electric charge under my skin, a steadiness in my spine. I walked to the mirror in the hallway. For a moment, I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. Her hair was still gray, her eyes still tired, her skin still marked by years of strain. But behind those eyes, something else glowed. Not fear, not resignation, determination. Richard's photo on the wall caught my gaze again. He had been gone for 7 years, yet in that moment I could almost hear his voice low and certain. About time, Emily. I nodded to the empty hallway. Yes, about time. The clock read 8:45. Only an hour and 15 minutes had passed, and yet everything felt altered. 3 calls, 3 clean cuts through the chains that had bound me. Outside, the world looked the same, cars rushing past a mail truck, stopping at the corner, children on bicycles shrieking in the crisp morning air. But for me, everything had changed. The house, once a place where I shuffled silently behind my children's demands, felt different now, stronger. Mine again. I brewed another pot of coffee. This time I sat at the table and sipped it slowly, savoring the taste, not of bitterness, but of clarity. Tomorrow they would learn, but today I had already begun. The phone vibrated against the table so violently I thought it might crack. I picked it up, saw Olivia's name flashing across the screen, and answered. Mom! Her voice was shredded with panic. They canceled it. The resort just called they released the reservation and the bridal shop. God, they won't hold my dress anymore. Mom, what did you do? Her sobs filled my ear. For a moment, I let the silence stretch, then said evenly, I froze. The card Olivia. The spending stops now. There was a sharp inhale, the sound of disbelief. What? No, you can't. The wedding is in 2 months. Everything depends on those deposits. How could you sabotage me like this?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't tremble. "Your wedding is not a financial emergency of mine. My money is not your lifeline." She let out a raw scream. "Don't talk like that. You've always said family comes first. You promised you'd support me. Dad would have never." I cut her off, my tone cold. "Your father worked every day of his life to give us stability, and I will not let his legacy be squandered on champagne fountains and imported tulips." Her voice dropped, desperate, cajoling. "Mom, please, listen to me. It's not just about me. It's about us, about making our family look respectable. Do you know how much Henry's parents are spending? If I don't match them, I'll look pathetic. Please, for once, think about my position." I exhaled through my nose. "I am thinking about your position. You're a grown woman who still thinks appearances are worth more than principles. That ends today." She switched tactics so quickly I could almost hear the gears turning. "Mom, I love you. You know I love you, right? I send you messages every day. Sometimes I sound demanding, but that's just stress. You mean everything to me, everything. Please don't do this to me now, not when I need you most." Her words might have once melted me, but now they rang hollow. I said, "Steady love doesn't come with receipts, Olivia. If it does, it isn't love. It's an invoice." There was a gasp. Then fury exploded down the line. "You're punishing me. After all I've done for you, after including you in my plans, after trusting you, this is how you repay me, by humiliating me in front of Henry's family. You trusted me?" I echoed, my voice sharp enough to cut. "No, you used me, and you counted on my silence." She began sobbing again, high-pitched and frantic. "You don't understand. I can't undo this. Vendors will blacklist me. Henry's parents will think I'm irresponsible. I'll be ruined." "You won't be ruined," I said coldly. "You'll just have to face the truth that you cannot spend what you don't have. That lesson is long overdue." For a beat only, her shallow, frantic breathing came through the speaker. Then she whispered, venom laced under the desperation. "Anthony told me you were getting difficult. He said you were starting to change. I didn't believe him. But now I see it. You're turning against your own children." The words stung, but I refused to let them land. "No. I'm finally turning toward myself. And you can call it betrayal if you want, but I call it survival." Her voice spiked again. "So that's it? You're just cutting me off after everything." "Yes." The single word landed heavier than any argument. She wailed into the receiver, but I didn't flinch. "You can't," she screamed. "You'll regret this, Mom. When I walk down that aisle and you're sitting there in shame because I couldn't even have the dress I wanted, you'll regret it." I let her finish. Then I said, calm and deliberate, "Better to sit in shame for a moment than to live the rest of my life as your banker. I won't apologize for reclaiming what's mine." "Mom," she cried again, voice cracking under rage and terror. "Please, please, I'm begging you, just one more payment, just the resort. Then I'll handle the rest. I swear. Please don't ruin this for me." I closed my eyes, steadying my breath. I almost felt sorry, but then I remembered the overheard phone call, the word "Luck Long." The image of myself erased from my own Christmas table. My jaw locked. "No," I said. "This is not my burden to carry. If your marriage depends on how much money I pour into the celebration, then it's built on nothing but paper and debt. You want to prove yourself to Henry's family? Do it with your own means, not mine." Her sobs turned guttural. "I hate this. I hate you right now. And for the first time in decades, I didn't shrink. Then hate me. Hate me all you want. But you'll remember this as the day your mother finally stopped being your servant." She gasped like I had slapped her. Then the line erupted with incoherent crying words tumbling over each other, rage and panic blending into noise. I pulled the phone away from my ear. "Goodbye, Olivia," and I ended the call. The silence afterward was startling sharp. My heart hammered, but I felt no guilt. Instead, a strange calm washed over me. The phone lit up again almost instantly, her name buzzing, begging to be answered. I let it ring. Then Anthony's name appeared, vibrating insistently. I didn't pick that up either. For years, I had been their safety net. This morning, I cut the ropes. I poured myself another cup of coffee and stared out the window. The sky was brilliant blue, indifferent to the storm unraveling inside my children's lives. For the first time, I wasn't part of their chaos. And the stillness, oh, the stillness felt like freedom. I had barely set my purse down on the coffee table when the front door slammed so hard the walls shook. Anthony stormed into the living room, face-red fists clenched. He shouted, "What the hell is going on? My debit card was declined this morning, and Hermione says you texted her, telling her to pack her stuff and leave by tonight. Are you out of your mind?" I didn't flinch. I lifted my gaze from the purse and said, "Calm as stone, I'm taking back my home. Hermione does not live here, and you, if you want to stay, will need a rental agreement, in writing." His jaw dropped, then snapped shut. A rental agreement. He barked out a laugh that was more like a snarl. "This is a joke. Tell me you're joking, Mom. I'm your son. I didn't move. Yes, you are, but being my son doesn't give you ownership of my house or my accounts. That ends today." Anthony's hands flew up, frustration burning in his eyes. "This is insane. Hermione is my fiancée. Where do you expect us to go? You'd really throw her out on the street. If she wants a place to live, she should make arrangements with you, not me," I replied. "My roof is not hers by default." He softened his voice, suddenly, pacing closer, lowering his head the way he used to when he wanted something as a boy. "Mom, listen. Maybe you're stressed. Maybe Olivia upset you. But this isn't you. You've always been generous, supportive. You never turned me away. Please don't do this. Think of everything I've done to help around here. I mowed the lawn, fixed the garage door, ran errands. Don't erase all that because of some misunderstanding." I locked eyes with him. "Mowing the lawn twice in 6 months doesn't pay for groceries, Anthony. Fixing a hinge doesn't replace rent. Don't insult me with crumbs and call it bread." His face flushed with anger again. "You're twisting everything I stayed here to keep you company after Dad died. I sacrificed so much for you, and now you want to charge me to stay in my own childhood home." I leaned forward, voice sharp. "You didn't stay for me. You stayed because it was free. Don't rewrite history." He slammed his palm against the wall. "If Hermione goes, I go too. Is that what you want? To lose your only son?" I stood steady, unshaken. "That's your choice. But if you leave, don't come crawling back when life gets inconvenient. My door will not swing open again." He froze eyes wide like he didn't recognize me. Then his voice cracked with fury. "You'd really throw me away after everything? You're heartless." "No," I said firmly. "I'm finally putting a heart back into myself. I've given and given until there was nothing left. That's over." He tried another angle, softer again. "Mom, please. You know Hermione loves you. She cooks for you, keeps you company. She told me just last night how grateful she is to be part of this family. Don't ruin that. We can make this work. Just let us stay the way it's been. We'll do better, I promise." I shook my head. Hermione's gratitude doesn't pay the bills. Her smiles don't cover utilities. And I will not bankroll 2 grown adults pretending they're helpless. His patience snapped. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "You're choosing money over family." "No," I shot back. "I'm choosing dignity over exploitation." The silence after those words was brutal. His face twisted fury, mixing with disbelief. Then he spat, "Fine. If that's how you want it, you'll regret this. You'll be alone, rotting in this house while we're gone. Don't come begging when you realize how much you need me." I stepped to the door, pulled the ring of keys from my bag, and held one up. "If you walk out, Anthony, it will be final, because I'll be changing these locks today." He stared at me like I'd stabbed him. Then he turned on his heel, shouting down the hall, "Hermione, pack your things. We're leaving." I heard drawers slam, hurried footsteps, the sound of her voice shaky, confused. "But Anthony, where will we go?" He muttered something low and bitter, then dragged her toward the front door. He paused once, hand gripping the knob, and glared at me. "You just destroyed this family. Remember that." I didn't blink. "No, Anthony. I just stopped letting you destroy me." He yanked the door open, and they stormed out, bags banging against the frame. The slam rattled through the house like thunder. I stood still for a long moment. Then I turned, walked to the new box on the side table, and pulled out the set of locks I had bought that morning. With steady hands, I unscrewed the old hardware and replaced it. The final click of the bolt sliding into place echoed through the empty house. It wasn't just metal sliding into wood. It was a declaration, the sound of freedom. For the first time in years, this was truly my home again. The doorbell rang just after dusk. I opened it to see Henry standing on the porch, his hands shoved deep into his coat pockets. He looked nervous, almost boyish, shifting from one foot to the other. "Evening, Aunt Emily," he said softly. "May I come in?" I studied his face for a moment. Henry wasn't like my children. He had always been polite, considerate, steady. I stepped aside. "Come in, Henry." He followed me into the living room. The faint glow of Christmas lights outside spilled through the curtains, casting the room in muted reds and golds. He sat down gingerly on the sofa, as if afraid the cushions might reject him. "I wanted to talk," he began. "Olivia's been upset. She said things got out of hand earlier. I thought maybe I could help clear things up. She's under a lot of stress with the wedding planning. I know it's been hard on you, too." I didn't respond right away. Instead, I picked up the folder on the coffee table and slid it toward him. My voice was even. "Henry, this isn't about stress or misunderstandings. It's about facts. Open that." He hesitated, then lifted the cover. His eyes fell on the pages. My bank statements, line after line, the charges glaring in black ink. Hotel reservations, designer boutiques, catering deposits, Emily. His voice faltered. He skimmed faster, his brow furrowing deeper with each line. Then he stopped at the final figure. $19,000 withdrawn in less than 3 months. His mouth went dry. 19,000, I leaned forward. $19,000. That's what your fiancé has drained from me. Did you know? He shook his head, color draining from his face. No. I thought you had offered. She told me you wanted to help us start strong, that you insisted. His hands trembled as he turned the page back and forth, as if the numbers might change. I had no idea she hid this from me. The silence stretched heavy. I let it hang, watching him wrestle with the weight of what he'd just learned. Finally, he pressed a hand over his face. "She lied to me," he whispered. "She looked me in the eye and told me you gave this freely." I nodded slowly. People on the outside often see what those closest choose not to. I've watched Olivia twist stories before. I stayed quiet because I didn't want to cause a rift, but the truth doesn't vanish because you look away from it. He lowered his hand, his eyes glistening. I thought I knew her. We've been planning a life together, and I didn't see any of this. Maybe I didn't want to. Love can blind you, I said, not unkindly. But blindness has a cost. I've been paying it. Now you see it too. Henry sat up straighter, gripping the papers so tightly the edges crumpled. She told me she needed money for the florist, for the photographer. She swore she was covering half with her own savings. I trusted her. I never asked to see the receipts. Now, his voice cracked. Now I see where it all came from. I watched him measuring every word. "Henry, you seem like a decent man. That's why I'm showing you this. I don't want to see you walk into a marriage blind. If Olivia treats me her own mother like this, how do you think she'll treat you once the vows are spoken and the accounts are shared?" He froze, the reality sinking in. His lips parted, but no sound came. For a moment, he looked younger than he was stripped of confidence. Finally, he asked, almost pleading, "Do you think she can change?" I didn't soften. Not unless she chooses to. And right now, all she's chosen is entitlement. She hasn't apologized. She hasn't admitted fault. She's angry because the money stopped, not because of what she did. He dropped the folder onto the coffee table, the papers fanning out like a silent indictment. He buried his head in his hands. I feel like a fool. How could I miss this? I placed a hand on the table, steady. You're not a fool, Henry. You trusted someone you loved, but trust without accountability becomes permission. And Olivia has taken full advantage. He lifted his head, eyes red-rimmed. She's been talking about a bigger house, about new furniture after the wedding. I thought she was dreaming big. I didn't know she was already spending money that wasn't hers. That's because she's never faced consequences, I said sharply. Every time she reached, I gave. Every time she demanded, I bent. Today, that ends. And maybe for the first time, you're seeing her without the veil of excuses. Henry stood abruptly pacing the room, his fists clenched at his sides. She told me you were being cruel, that you didn't care about her happiness, that you'd abandoned her. He spun to face me. But you're the one abandoned, aren't you? She abandoned respect. She abandoned gratitude. And I. His voice broke. I let her drag me into it. I rose to meet his gaze. You don't owe me anything, Henry, but you owe yourself the truth. Decide if you can live with this pattern because it won't stop with me. He drew a shaky breath, nodding. I need to think. I need to talk to her, but... He trailed off, then shook his head. No. First, I need to decide what kind of man I want to be and what kind of husband. I didn't smile, but something in my chest eased. For once, someone was seeing the truth without me forcing it. Henry moved toward the door, but paused with his hand on the knob. He turned back, his expression solemn. Thank you, Aunt Emily, for showing me, for trusting me with this. I won't forget it. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving me alone again in the dim light. But the loneliness felt different this time, not empty, but resolute. I gathered the papers back into the folder, my hands steady. The war inside my home was far from over. But for the first time, I wasn't the only one carrying the weight of the truth. The phone rang not long after Henry left. My chest tightened when I saw Anthony's name flashing on the screen. I picked it up, pressing it firmly against my ear. His voice exploded down the line. Mother, what are you doing? You're destroying this family. I didn't answer right away. I let his rage spill unchecked. You think you can humiliate us, throw Hermione out, embarrass Olivia in front of Henry. You're tearing everything apart. You've lost it, Mom. You're not thinking straight. I drew in a slow breath. Anthony, I know exactly what I'm doing. He barked a bitter laugh. Do you? Because I don't think you do. We've already spoken to someone about this, a lawyer. We're considering filing for incompetency. If we can prove you're unstable, you won't have control over anything anymore. His words sliced through the air, sharp and deliberate. He wanted me scared. You'd try to declare me unfit. I asked, my tone cool even. You've given us no choice, he snapped. You're sabotaging your own children. What do you expect us to do, stand back and watch you ruin yourself? You're paranoid, erratic. You locked me out of my own house. You need help. My grip on the phone tightened, but my voice never wavered. This is my house, and you've been warned. If you want to live here, you sign a lease. If not, you walk away. You think this is a game? His voice rose. We'll drag you to court if we have to. Everyone will know you've lost your mind. We'll take control before you can waste another dime. I stood up from the chair spine, straight pacing slowly across the living room as his fury blasted through the receiver. I stopped by the window, the cold night pressing against the glass. Anthony, let me make something very clear. I said steady and sharp. Your father's lawyer, yes, the same man who handled his will, has every record of my financial decisions, every transaction, every signature. He has copies of everything. If you want to challenge me, you'll have to go through him." There was a pause. Not silence exactly, just the faint hiss of his breathing. I continued, "You won't find evidence of instability because there is none. What you'll find is a paper trail proving exactly how far you and your sisters have taken advantage of me. If you want to drag this family into the courtroom, Anthony, be my guest, but you won't like what comes out." His temper snapped back into place like a whip. "You're making a mistake. You think a lawyer's going to protect you? You're already alone, Mother. Who's going to stand with you when this gets ugly?" "Someone already has," I said quietly. "Henry saw the truth tonight. He knows what Olivia's done." The silence deepened. This time it was heavy. He hadn't expected that. "Henry." He repeated, his voice suddenly less certain. "Yes. He came here and I showed him the statements. He knows the money trail. He knows the lies. The walls are closing in Anthony, not on me, but on all of you." There was a sharp inhale like he'd been punched. Then the rage returned, though thinner, now stretched over fear. "You've poisoned him against us. You're turning everyone against us." "No," I said firmly. "You've done that yourselves. I'm simply no longer covering for you." His breathing was ragged. "You think you're strong enough to fight us all? You're an old woman, Mom. You don't have the strength for this." I felt my pulse steady. For the first time in years, I didn't feel fragile. I felt steel running through me. "Don't mistake age for weakness," I told him. "I've survived more storms than you've ever faced, and I am not afraid of my own children." "Then you leave us no choice," he hissed. "Do what you feel you must," I replied. "But understand this, every threat you make only shows me that I'm right to draw the line. And every step you take against me will be recorded, documented, and exposed for what it is, greed dressed up as concern." There was another long pause. I pictured him on the other end, jaw-tight, phone clutched in a fist, eyes darting as he realized I wasn't bending this time. Finally he spat, "You'll regret this." "Not half as much as you will," I said, my voice like iron. Then I pressed the red button and ended the call. The silence in the house afterward was deafening, but it wasn't empty. It was solid, resolved, like the quiet after a thunderclap. I set the phone down on the table, my hand steady, not trembling as it once would have. I walked to the front door and checked the locks. The new deadbolt clicked firmly into place. That sound, the sound of finality, of drawing the line, echoed louder than Anthony's threats ever could. I knew they would come back. They would push harder. They would try to intimidate me, smear me, maybe even rally others to their side. But I wasn't afraid. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of them. The war had begun in earnest. But now I was armed not just with documents and lawyers, but with my own resolve. And they had just learned what that sounded like. The doorbell rang early the next morning, shrill and relentless. I had barely poured my first cup of coffee when I heard it. My stomach tightened, but my steps didn't falter. I opened the door, and there she was, Olivia. Her hair was tangled, her makeup smeared from tears, her eyes swollen and red. She looked smaller than usual, shoulders caved in, clutching her phone in one hand as if it were a lifeline. "Mother," she whispered, then louder, her voice cracking. "Mother, please." I stood in the doorway, unmoving. "What do you want, Olivia?" I asked evenly. She rushed forward, nearly stumbling onto the porch. "Everything's falling apart. Henry's furious. He says I lied, that I used you, that I dragged him into this mess. He's talking about calling off the wedding." Her voice broke into sobs, high-pitched and frantic. "I can't lose him, Mom. I can't. I felt no pity. Not anymore." "You didn't lose him because of me," I said firmly. "You lost him because of your choices." Her hands trembled, gripping the railing as if it could hold her together. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. It was just supposed to be one little thing, the card, the wedding. You always helped. You always said, family comes first." "Yes," I answered, my voice like steel. "Family comes first. But family doesn't drain their mother dry and leave her alone with the bills." Her face twisted. You don't understand. I was desperate. I wanted a perfect day. I wanted to prove I wasn't nothing. Henry's family, they're wealthy. They're critical. If the wedding wasn't grand, they'd think I was beneath him. I did it for us. You did it for yourself. I cut her off. Don't dress it up as sacrifice. You bled me for $19,000, Olivia. $19,000. That was my savings. That was my security. She clutched her chest, staggering closer. Please don't say that. Please just talk to Henry for me. Tell him you offered. Tell him you wanted to do it. If he hears it from you, he'll forgive me. The audacity almost made me laugh. You want me to lie to your fiancé, cover for your deception, and take the blame? Yes, she shouted, her voice raw. Because you're my mother. That's what mothers do. They protect their children. My jaw tightened. And what do children do, Olivia? Do they rob their mothers blind? Do they gamble away their futures on flowers and dresses? Do they spit in the hand that raised them? Her tears burned hotter. Anger flared in her eyes, desperation mutating into venom. You're cruel. You're just a bitter, lonely old woman. You think this house protects you? It doesn't. You'll die alone in here and no one will care. For years, that sentence would have gutted me. Loneliness had always been my shadow, the fear I shoved behind my routines and puzzles and quiet nights. But hearing it now thrown like a weapon from my own daughter's mouth, I felt nothing. I straightened my shoulders, the morning light cutting across the doorway, framing me in its stark honesty. If that's true, Olivia, then so be it. I'd rather die alone with my dignity than live surrounded by betrayal. She stared at me, lips trembling, waiting for me to break, waiting for me to soften. But I didn't. Her sobs grew jagged, more violent. Please, Mom, don't do this to me. I'll make it right, I swear. I'll pay you back. You'll what? I asked, my voice suddenly sharp, slicing her promises into shreds. You'll pay me back with what money, Olivia? You don't even have enough to keep your own roof. You'll make it right. You've been making it worse for years. And I let it happen because I couldn't say no. But now I can. And I am. She shook her head, clutching at the air like a drowning woman. You don't mean that. You can't mean that. You've always been there for me. I was. I said, my voice cold and final, until you mistook my love for weakness. She gasped as if the words had struck her physically. Please, enough, I said. I stepped back, my hand on the door. Her eyes widened, realizing what was coming. Mom, don't, she begged. Don't shut me out. You shut yourself out, Olivia. Her face twisted into fury, the tears drying on her cheeks. You'll regret this, she screamed. When you're old and helpless, when no one visits you, you'll wish you'd treated me differently. The venom no longer had teeth. It was the last desperate strike of someone cornered, flailing against the inevitable. I lifted my chin. Goodbye, Olivia. And with that, I closed the door. The latch clicked, a sound so small, yet it thundered through my chest like victory. On the other side, I could hear her pounding her fists once, twice, before the sobs returned, fading into the distance. I didn't move until silence returned. I turned the quiet of my home wrapping around me, not as emptiness, but as clarity. For the first time in years, silence wasn't loneliness. It was peace. I walked back to my coffee. It had grown cold, but I sipped it anyway, my hand steady. The siege had broken. And though the battlefield was my own living room, I knew one thing: I was still standing. The next afternoon, I heard another knock. It was quieter than before, heavy in rhythm like someone carrying shame. When I opened the door, Henry stood there alone, disheveled and pale. Emily, he said softly, I owe you an apology. I stepped aside, motioning him in. He walked like a man who hadn't slept, and when he sat down at the table, he didn't meet my eyes. Finally, he pulled in a breath. I asked Olivia about the card, he said. She admitted everything. She said it was her right because you're her mother. She said you were exaggerating, making me doubt her. And when I questioned her more, she accused me of letting you manipulate me. I let the silence stretch, watching the pain settle over his face. And what did you believe? I asked. He looked up, then eyes rimmed red. I believed the bank statement you put in my hand. I believed the numbers that can't lie. And I believed the way she dodged and twisted instead of answering me. His voice broke. I can't marry someone I can't trust. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Sliding it across the table, he said, "This is a check for half the deposit. I know it doesn't cover what you've lost, but it's my responsibility too. I should have asked questions sooner. I should have seen who she was turning into." I stared at the envelope. My throat tightened, not from greed or relief, but because integrity was a rare thing in this house lately. "You don't owe me this, Henry," I said quietly. "Yes, I do," he insisted, "because I stood beside her while she drained you. Even if I didn't know, my silence enabled it." For a long moment, we both listened to the clock ticking in the corner. His words weighed heavier than money. Then he said what I already knew was coming. "The wedding is off. I called the resort, the florist, everyone. There will be no vows, no celebration. Olivia doesn't understand. She called me a coward, said I betrayed her. But Emily, what kind of marriage begins with lies? What kind of future is built on stolen money?" He shook his head slowly. "I won't do it." The room went still. I didn't feel triumph. I felt sorrow for the wreckage, but also respect. Henry had drawn a line Olivia refused to see. "I'm sorry you were dragged into this," I said at last. "Don't be," he replied. "You showed me the truth. You did what I was too blind to do." At the door before leaving, he paused. "Emily, I want you to know I never wanted your money. I only wanted a family. But I can't build one with deceit." I followed him onto the porch. The sunlight caught on his weary face, and for the first time since this began, I felt something solid, a reminder that honesty still existed in this broken circle. "Henry, I said you're a good man. Don't let this destroy you." He nodded faintly. "I won't. But it will take time." And then he was gone, walking down the steps, leaving only the envelope on my table, an envelope that felt heavier than gold. In that moment, I understood Olivia had lost more than money. She had lost the one person who loved her enough to stay until she pushed him past the point of return. And I, though bruised and weary, stood a little taller, because the truth had cut through the lies. That night stretched long and heavy. The weight of Henry's visit still lingered, his honesty cutting through the fog my children had built around me. But dawn came anyway, sharp and cold, as if the world refused to pause for heartbreak. Not long after sunrise, a knock rattled my door. I froze. It wasn't the confident pounding Anthony used when he came to declare war. It wasn't Henry's polite, measured knock either. This was hesitant. 3 soft thuds spaced out, trembling. I opened the door. There stood Olivia. Her face was swollen from crying, her hair disheveled and her shoulders hunched like a scolded child. She clutched her coat tight, even though the December air was still. "Me?" she whispered, voice cracking. "Please let me stay." I studied her. Her lips quivered, her eyes darted to the floor, and for the first time in years, she looked less like my grown daughter and more like the little girl who used to cling to my apron strings. But that child was gone. What stood before me was a woman who had stolen from her mother and spit venom when caught. "Stay," I asked quietly. "Stay for what, Olivia? To rest or to regroup?" Her throat bobbed. She didn't answer. I kept my voice steady, sharp. "Tell me, what are you sorry for taking my money without asking, for lying to my face, or just for watching your plan collapse in front of you?" Her jaw tightened. Still, she said nothing. The silence between us grew thick. My breath clouded in the air, and I could see her shaking, but she refused to speak the words that mattered. Finally, I nodded slowly. "You don't have an answer. That tells me everything." "Me, please," she said again, desperation rising. "I don't have anywhere to go. Henry, he left. He said I was toxic, that I betrayed him. He ended everything. I can't go back to him, and Anthony is furious. I only have you." For a moment, her words clawed at something deep inside me, the instinct to protect, to shelter, to forgive. But I clenched my jaw. Those instincts had kept her blind and reckless. I steadied myself. "You don't have me, Olivia. Not until you learn what respect is. Not until you understand that love isn't a wallet and family isn't a chain you can yank whenever you're in need." Her lips trembled. "You're my mother. You're supposed to love me no matter what." I felt my chest burn, but I stood tall. Love doesn't mean I let you use me. Love doesn't mean I let you rot under my roof. Love means I tell you the truth even when it burns. Her eyes flared with anger. "You're cruel, you're bitter. You'll die alone in this house and no one will come to bury you." The words were meant to slice me open. Years ago they might have, but not now. Not after everything. I drew in a slow breath and replied firmly, "Maybe. But I'd rather die with dignity than live surrounded by vultures. Remember this. Olivia, choices are many, but the road you walk is yours alone." She flinched as if struck. My hand pressed against the door. When you understand that when respect becomes more than a word, you spit through gritted teeth, then this door will open again. Until then. I closed the door. The latch clicked final and cold. I stood in the silence of my own house, listening to her muffled sobs on the other side. My hands trembled not from weakness, but from the raw force of restraint. Behind me, the glow of Christmas lights spilled softly across the floor. The tree in the living room shimmered its ornaments, catching the early light of morning. For the first time, I felt the warmth of those lights not as decoration, but as defiance. A reminder that even in the coldest winters, hope burned steady. Olivia's footsteps eventually faded down the porch steps. The quiet that followed was heavy, but it was clean. No lies, no shouting, no demands. Just quiet. I stood by the tree staring at the lights. Somewhere inside, a wound throbbed, but another part of me felt unshackled. The door was closed for now, and maybe forever. But it wasn't just a door shutting her out. It was a door keeping my dignity in. The phone rang just after dusk. I almost didn't pick it up. The day had already been heavy and my body longed for rest. But something inside me said I had to answer. "Hello," I said. There was silence for a beat, then Anthony's voice broke through low and uncertain. "Me? If I changed, would it matter?" For a moment, the room felt colder. His tone was different. Gone was the arrogance, the sharp edges he usually wielded like a sword. This was hesitation, almost fear. I closed my eyes. His words twisted into my chest, stirring memories I had tried to bury. His first steps on our old porch, his school speeches where he beamed with pride, the little boy who once cried when he scraped his knee. That boy was still somewhere inside him, but buried beneath greed, resentment, and years of choices that had carved him into someone I barely recognized. I steadied my breath. "Anthony." I said, my voice quiet, but firm. Change isn't a word. It isn't a promise spoken in the dark. Change has to live in what you do, not what you say. He exhaled sharply as if I had struck him. "You don't believe me," he muttered. "No," I replied, my throat tightening. "I don't believe words anymore. Not from you. I've heard too many. You've told me you'd try. You've told me I was everything, and then you've turned around and treated me as nothing. A mother can only be lied to so many times before the truth becomes clearer than hope." The silence on the other end stretched long. I could hear the faint sound of him breathing heavy, uneven. Then almost desperately he said, "But I'm your son. Doesn't that mean something?" I let my head rest against the wall, the weight of decades pressing down on me. "It means everything," I whispered. "That's why this hurts so much. You think being my son gives you immunity, that blood alone will wash away everything. But love isn't a shield for cruelty. It's a responsibility, and you've treated it like a weapon." He didn't answer right away. I heard a faint choke in his throat. Then his voice came back strained. "If I showed you if I did something, would you believe me?" Then I clenched my hands together, fighting the tremor in my chest. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to throw him a lifeline. But I knew if I gave him hope without proof, it would all collapse again. He had to understand the line he had crossed. "Anthony?" I said slowly, "If you want to change, then change. Not for me. Not for the house or the money or the things you think you've lost. Change because you want to be the kind of man who doesn't break his mother's heart for gain. Change because you can't bear the man you've become. Until then, don't ask me to believe you." The silence turned heavier. I could almost hear his thoughts racing, colliding with the wall of his pride. Finally, he said, his voice nearly breaking, "So this is it. You've given up on me." I pressed my lips together. My chest ached. "I haven't given up on you, but I've given up on saving you. That part is yours now. Only you can decide if you're worth saving." The line went quiet. I thought he had hung up. But then, almost like a child again, he whispered, "I don't know if I can." My heart wavered, but I didn't let my voice waver with it. "Then you've already answered your own question." A long pause followed, then the call disconnected. I sat in my chair staring at the quiet house around me. The Christmas lights still glowed faintly in the window, casting shadows across the floor. My hands trembled as I folded them in my lap. I felt no victory, only the dull ache of truth. He had reached out, not in triumph, but in hesitation, and I had held the line. It felt like breaking my own ribs, but it was the only way to show him the difference between words and change. For the first time, I realized this story might not end with reconciliation. It might end with the door still closed, the silence still unbroken. And maybe that was the true cost of dignity. I whispered to myself almost like a prayer, not anger, just clarity. And as the night deepened, I sat alone knowing my voice had carried both firmness and finality. Whether he changed or not was no longer in my hands. The doorbell rang just as the last light of day slipped behind the snow-dusted pines. My heart beat with a rhythm I hadn't felt in years, not dread, not tension, but anticipation. I smoothed my sweater, brushed a strand of gray hair from my forehead, and opened the door. Emily Margaret's voice broke through the chill, evening bright as it had always been. She stood there, bundled in a green scarf, her cheeks pink from the cold, and behind her 3 old friends carried small boxes and bottles of wine. Their laughter spilled into the house before they even crossed the threshold. Come in," I said, holding the door wide. Warmth and the scent of gingerbread drifted out to greet them. The living room glowed with strands of soft Christmas lights draped across the mantel, a small tree twinkling in the corner. The table was set not extravagantly, but with care. A plate of ginger cookies, a wheel of cheese, roasted nuts, and 2 bottles of red wine stood ready beside tall, flickering candles. As coats were shed and voices rose, the house seemed to expand, as if the walls themselves breathed easier. For too long, silence had been my only companion. Tonight, silence was banished. Margaret pressed my hand and leaned close. "You look lighter, Emily, like a weight has lifted." I smiled not with effort, but naturally, because it has. I thought peace was something someone else had to give me. Tonight, I know better. We gathered around the table. The fire snapped in the hearth, casting golden light across familiar faces. Margaret poured the wine, lifting her glass. To Emily, who finally remembered she's the strongest one among us. Laughter rippled through the room. I raised my glass, but said nothing at first. Words formed slowly, carefully. Strength doesn't mean hardness. It means knowing when to stop breaking yourself for people who refuse to stand on their own. I forgot that, but now I remember. The glasses clinked. The taste of red wine warmed my throat, and with it came a sense of grounding. As music hummed softly in the background, gentle carols, voices of strangers filling the air with peace, I looked at the chair at the head of the table, Richard's chair. For years I had avoided it, leaving it empty as a shrine, a reminder of absence. Tonight I walked over and pulled it back. Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Emily." I sat. My back straightened. The leather creaked under my weight, but it did not feel foreign. For the first time, I did not sit in mourning. I sat in continuation. "This was Richard's place," I said quietly. "He led with calm, with integrity. When he was gone, I thought my role was to keep everything together, for the children to be their shield. But I see now that was my mistake. Shielding became enabling, and enabling became surrender. The room hushed. Even the fire seemed to still. I am not here to replace Richard. I went on, my voice steady, but to carry forward the strength he believed I had. The victory is not revenge over Olivia or Anthony. The victory is standing here tonight free. Free of manipulation, free of lies, free of the prison I built for myself out of obligation." Margaret's eyes glistened. "Emily, that's the truest gift you could have given yourself." I breathed in deeply. The air smelled of cinnamon pine and smoke. Yes, the greatest Christmas gift isn't under a tree. It's self-respect. It's freedom. I gave it to myself, and I will never return it. The words settled into me like roots. Around me, my friends nodded, each understanding in their own way the cost of dignity, the weight of letting go. We turned back to the food. Laughter began again, stories flowing easily. Margaret recounted the time we got caught sneaking pies from the church kitchen. Harold teased me for my terrible singing at last year's service. We laughed until tears rolled, not from pain, but from joy rediscovered. At one point, I caught my reflection in the window, an older woman, hair silver lines of grief and strength etched deep. But behind her, the glow of the lights, the faces of friends, the fire. She did not look alone. Later, when the plates were empty and the candles burned low, Margaret reached for my hand once more. "Emily, what will you do now?" I looked around the room. The answer rose without hesitation. "I will live. Not for them, not in fear of them. For me. For what's left of the days ahead. I thought my life ended with Richard or with the betrayals of my children. But tonight proves it's only beginning." The room was silent for a moment, filled with nothing but the crackle of fire. Then, one by one, they raised their glasses again. "To beginnings," Harold said. "To freedom," Margaret added. To Emily, another friend whispered. We drank, and this time the warmth went straight to my soul. When the clock struck midnight, I walked them to the door. Snow fell, gently, soft flakes drifting onto their shoulders as they stepped into the night. Their laughter lingered long after the door closed. I turned back to the quiet house, but it no longer felt empty. The tree sparkled, the embers glowed, and the chair where I sat now held meaning, not of loss, but of renewal. I whispered into the stillness as if Richard could hear. We made it. I'm still standing, and for the first time in years, my heart felt whole.